Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Meredith Duncan, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Leading Seaman Bianca Lastuzzi. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families who support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of the ceremony around Australia. This evening, wreaths will be laid by visitors as well as students on behalf of Hope Christian College Rowlands, Western Australia. Will you please stand now and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Roy Edward Arbin. Roy Arbin was born in 1894 to Edward and Mary Arbin of Bendigo, Victoria. He grew up in the district, attending Marist Brothers College in Bendigo, and went on to become a bootmaker and salesman. He was well known in Bendigo sporting circles and played Australian rules football for the Albion Imps. Arbin left his position working for Mr Collier, the Bendigo boot merchant, in July 1915 to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force. He went into Epsom Camp to undertake his preliminary military training. In November 1915, as his training was drawing to a close, Arbin was one of 9 passengers in a motor car coming back to camp from a trip into Bendigo. The driver of the car got a wheel stuck in a culvert at the side of the road and attempted to turn right and pull the car out. Instead, the car overturned, throwing all the occupants out, seriously injuring 2 of them. Private Arbin was lucky to have suffered only cuts and abrasions in the accident, while others received fractures and spinal injuries. Private Arbin left Australia for overseas service in January 1916 on board the troopship Themistocles. He left with a group of reinforcements to the 7th Battalion, but transferred to the 57th Battalion after arriving in Egypt in March. He continued training in Egypt with the rest of the AIF until the middle of the year, arriving in France to fight on the Western Front in late June 1916. Within days of arriving in France, the 57th Battalion took over a quiet sector of the front line near Estève. Private Arbin, at this time, was serving as a stretcher bearer to the battalion. In late July, no more than 6 weeks after Private Arbin arrived in France, his family received a cable to say that he was dead. His death was reported in the local newspapers with a note to say that no particulars of the manner of his death were known. The clipping was sent to some soldiers from Bendigo serving in France. Corporal Rogers and Private Williams of the 57th Battalion saw the notice and wrote to the newspaper. It was while taking a wounded comrade to the dressing station that Arbin sustained his injuries. His mate was killed outright, and he himself was wounded in 8 different places. This happened during one of the severest bombardments that we have yet had. Stretcher bearing is one of the toughest jobs in the line, but whenever wanted, Private Arbin was always ready and waiting to do his best. Arbin had in fact been wounded in the spine and was evacuated from the battlefield to Bagthorpe Military Hospital in England. He died at 11:30 p.m. on the 19th of July 1916. There were 38 Australian patients in the hospital able to attend Private Arbin's funeral, along with a number of Australian nurses. In Australia, Roy's parents and 2 brothers, Henry and Leo, put a memorial service in the paper. It read, "In a soldier's grave he is sleeping, one of Earth's dearest and best, our hero." Today, Private Roy Arbin lies in the Nottingham General Cemetery under the simple epitaph, R.I.P. He was 24 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Roy Edward Arbin, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and I wish you a very good evening.